Hello everyone, Osk here. The strongest force in the world is not love, it's spite. I mean, yeah, sure, love is certainly powerful, but spite is one hell of a drug. When someone pisses you off enough, you can do anything. I mean, hell, half the videos I do are just made of spite. Medium like books and film are the best example because there are levels how spiteful you can be. You could either throw a small cute jab to get back someone you don't like, or dedicate an entire work on how you hate someone specifically. And funny enough, Vegan are the best example for that. The best example of spite in video games are the old rivalry of Nintendo and Sega, and some one-liners of Duke Nukem. However, I consider them weak sauce. The one I'm talking about are the juicy stuff. It could be either a company seeing a character as a ripoff instead of a thank you gift, or it could be just someone making fun of a certain animal organization. So enough said, let's get into it. So let's begin the video off with starting with another fighting game. That's right, Street Fighter. And also other fighting too. Whoops. I feel like it wasn't for Capcom and Street Fighter, none of our favorite fighting games would even exist. Released in 1987 by Takashi Nishiyama, he designed it with big idea for a, at the time, expanding genre of fighting games. While the fighting part was important, Nishiyama was more interested in telling a long-form story that gave more focus to Street Fighters. More backstory, detailed bio for every single character, history, family tree, everything. However, due to the limit of the arcade at the time, most of them will be cut. However, there was another company that offered Nishiyama to make a story-rich fighting game, and that company is SNK. You know, the same company who released a character only for said character to have a different name? Yeah, that SNK. SNK wanted to get into the fighting game field, and to start, they stole Nishiyama from Capcom. But to be fair, he's already planned to leave Capcom due to some personal disagreements with the higher-ups, and they will still find a straw. So they put in the director's chair and made their answer to Street Fighter called Fatal Fury. This was everything that Nishiyama wanted, a year-long story that followed with two brothers, Terry and Andy Borgard, to defeat the person who killed their father, Geese Howard. This would later inspire Hiroshi Masaoka to make his own fighting game that shared the same universe, Art of Fighting. Art of Fighting tasked you to rescue Yuri Sakazaki from the main villain, Mr. Big. I'm not joking, that's his actual name. Taking out the role for either her boyfriend, maybe, Robert Garcia, and her geek-out karate brother, Ryo Sakazaki. This character would start a year-long beef between Capcom and SNK. Now keep in mind, Ryo was made in part by Nishiyama, the person who helped create Ryo. He mentioned that Ryo wasn't meant to be a dig at Ryo or the employees. If anything, this is a thank you gift of Capcom. And how Capcom respond? Yeah, Capcom was upset by what they saw as a ripoff of Ryu and decided to fight back. During the release of Street Fighter and Alpha, they introduced some brand new characters like Charlie and Adam. However, one of them was hidden behind a very specific requirement. By highlighting random and entering code, you will unlock Dan Hibiki. And Dan is a dumbass. He's weak, pathetic, his fireball barely go out, and his DP is not only weak but also have an RNG factor whether or not he's invulnerable. If you didn't know the beef between SNK and Capcom, you might assume he's a parody between Ryu and Ken, but in reality, he's a joke at SNK's expense. Both his gi and hair are supposed to make fun of both Robert and Ryo. I mean, hell, Dan's Fireball is making fun of Ryo Fireball when you have his low special meter. To make it even better, one is Dan quote is just this: I don't think subtlety was part of their pay grade. Most people end the conversation about Dan at Capcom winning against SNK. However, it wasn't one-sided. See, they made one mistake by leaving one member alive. Well, no, obviously not Taka. He got when they made Dan dad, who got killed by Sagat. What I mean is Yuri Sakazaki, Robert, probably girlfriend. Yuri become playable in Art of Fighting 2 and avoids Capcom raid because, well, Sakura wasn't even a thing in 1994. SNK used Yuri moveset as a way to get revenge towards Capcom. Each move that she have is a way to make fun of Dan, including his Hyoshu Briken. It has been adapted to her level 3 at King of Fighter 14 and onward. However, the rivalry wasn't back and forth. You see, in 1999, SNK vs. Capcom for the Neo Geo Pocket was released as a collaboration with the two companies. Nishiyama, who left SNK to form his own company, helped to set up a meeting along Yoshiki Otomoto between the company's president of Capcom and SNK to discuss working together. SNK and Capcom would open the door to SNK and Capcom employees to hang out more. This friendship between two companies would eventually made Capcom vs. SNK into a full series. I mean, hell, recently they made a full port of SNK vs. Capcom Chaos and Fatal Fury character crossing over to Street Fighter character and vice versa. Whatever rivalry they have been squashed, and now they were working together now. For those who don't understand why that is a big deal, there was never a crossover character in Street Fighter 4, which is amazing to see. So yeah, that was the beef between SNK and Capcom, two companies that have a rivalry that turned to a friendship. But what if there was someone being so spiteful, just because? Well, needed to Edward McMillan to somehow to have beef with PETA for all companies. Edward McMillan is one of those people that I'm spite to be in terms of spiteness. McMillan, aka the creator of Super Meat Boy by name Isaac and not Super Meat Boy Forever, is one of the most beloved indie dev of all time. McMillan grew up a time where parodies were as pointed as they were obvious. The bluntness of a brick with all the gentleness that implies. He's also not a person to hold their punches. If he wants to make fun of you, he's just gonna make fun of you. And that's why I won't include the Judas Fed debacle. For those who haven't played Isaac, each character have a different headpiece for make them unique one another, and Judas is wearing a Fed. And people thought that they was making fun of Phil Fish, a person who created Fed and someone with a lot of history that I don't want to get into right now. The one I'm talking about is in a time where PETA of all companies decided to make fun of McMillan but failed miserably. You see, back in the early 2010, PETA was getting more radical with helping animals and decided to make some games to help spread the message. The first few games they made were innocent, however later on, they were slowly to start using more established characters for their games. Pokemon Black and Blue, Super Chick Sister, and the game I'm talking about, Super Tofu Boy. This casts Meat Boy as the main villain who kidnaps Bandit's girl and leaves Tofu Boy to save her. This game is basically a poor man version of Meat Boy, even with the, poor recreation of the physics. However, the main question that everyone have in mind is, why specifically Meat Boy? He's not made of meat, he's just someone without skin. So, turns out, it's all because of Edmund. As a promotional for Super Meat Boy, he looked around in the PETA forum and talked about how Meat Boy is the next big game and how it is disgusting propaganda. There's no way that PETA will fall for it. Fuck me, they actually did fall for it. While we can't confirm if this was a response to PETA, the original Flash version of Super Meat Boy was updated to make fun of PETA in the tip section of the game. If you think that wasn't enough, once the full game was released, both Edman and the team decided to add a character, and to unlock that character, you have to type in PETA file, and you lock Tofu Boy, and well...
Oh, would you look at that? There's a member of the local wildlife with us now.
Tofu Boy is one of the worst characters in the entire game. His run and jump height are pathetic, and do you know what the worst part is? He can't even beat the first fucking level. So yeah, that was probably the most funniest spitefulness I have ever encountered. All because McMillan wants to promote this game, and that's pretty funny. But what if an entire series had changed course because someone doesn't get it, or making themselves a problem? I know I already talked about this a while now, but that was mostly setup. What I'm talking about is the payoff of Shadow of Dam and Travis Strikes Again. I feel like calling Suda51 a crazy person is almost insulting. Mostly because if he was, then all this work would have been disconnected garbage for the sake of weirdness. But it isn't. Suda51 writing is very good and have a strong connection and theming that showed that he knows what he's doing. And besides, boiling down his work as weird anime nonsense showed me that he only played his action game and didn't understand those either. Play Silver Case. Plus, most of Suda's memorable games come after his transition into a mostly action game, more specifically No More Heroes. Unfortunately, that success got him noticed by EA, who Suda approached with Resident Evil creators Shinji Mikami to create Killer 7, and then later Akira Tooma, the creator of the Silent Hill soundtrack, to make Kirigami. Kirigami was supposed to be a dark survival horror game with a de-emphasized combat and a Kafka-esque tone. You work yourself up into a bigger frenzy, wondering what's gonna be next, and personally, that's pretty cool. My favorite type of horror is when the experience keeps you afraid even after said experience is over. Games like Mouthwashing, Signalis, and I know technically this isn't a game, but the recent Walden Fire episode is best example of those horrors. But with Shadow of the Dam case, it's less of that and more Resident Evil 4, but it's actually pretty good. Oh, that ain't so bad. However, 90% of the joke are just dick jokes. Fuck! Shadow of the Dam sounded like a Suda 51 game told by someone who haven't played a Suda 51 game before. Comparing this game to Killer 7, Silver Case, No More Heroes, you could tell that something is completely off. What's the message behind Shadow of the Dam that the other games have? Well, to be frank, not a whole lot. And this doesn't help that the development wasn't very good. You could check out my video of development hell if you want more information about this. But in short, whenever Suda proposed something new, it could either be turned down or turn something else. The main character doesn't have a gun? Add a gun. The gun have a fair companion? Make it to a British skull. The game is about fear and darkness and existential dread? Make it into a damsel distress story. The worst part is that Suda wasn't able to direct the game, only serving as the exec producer, and that means he had less input of what the game would be. However, I forgot to mention about one small thing in my Development Hell video. You see, whenever he talked about EA, he never said an employee told me that, or an executive. If you ever talk about EA, he always refers EA as singular. Once Shadow of the Dam released, it would ended up reviewing fine, but selling terribly, which hurt Suda deeply, seeing his vision turn into something unrecognizable. His next two games, Lollipop Chainsaw and Killer is Dead, would have been the same quality as the other Suda game. I mean, yeah, the games are good, but is it Killer 7 good? No More Hero good? Flower Sun of Rain good? And plus, with his previous game, it has a very solid connected string together into the Killer Pass series. But with these two, there's no connection. Until No More Hero Travis Strikes Again released, a game series that haven't had a proper sequel for 16 years. Now this time, Suda could probably work through his feelings. Now here's the thing about Suda and his work. He often inserts himself into his work in multiple ways, and that includes Travis Strikes Again. The most obvious example of this is the in-game developer, Juvelin. The story of Travis Strikes Again is all about playing through 6 different games that Juvelin worked on through his life. And of course, there are some parallels to Suda himself. And that includes the second to last level of Travis Strikes Again, Serious Moonlight. It was originally meant to be its own original game, a dark RPG with heavy theme inspired by Juvelin's own difficult lives. However, during the development, Juvelin became more erratic to the development team, adding more and more without accounting for what the technology could actually do and sending the game to development hell. By the time she realized that the scope was too much and she had to get something out, the rest of the time was actively revolting, and in a panic, she ended up forcing the game to be Damn Dark Night, a sequel to Shadow of the Dam. Yes, Shadow of the Dam exists in the No More Hero universe. After the game was released, the team were broken up and sent over to the studio, but one developer, Dan Bacatello, held a grudge. They were on the verge of making the perfect game, and he knew it. He was going to finish Serious Moonlight, however, Juvelin wouldn't hand the death ball over that the game was stored on. And to get it, Damien beat Juvelin to unconscious, both to get the ball back and for revenge to get Serious Moonlight cancelled. The No More Heroes series is not one to shy away from serious subject matter. Just look at Jean's story. But this scene has to be one of the most brutal and upsetting thing in the entire series. Hearing him describing with a sick pleasure how Jubilee deserved the beating and how bad she was actually beaten. And with Travis to collect the death ball, he delivered the same beating onto Damien that delivered onto Jubilee, and calling him such a low scum that he's not even worth killing. Damien's story in Travis Strikes Again ended with him swearing vengeance on Travis. Wow, that's a lot to take in. Now, for the context. This is John Riccatello, formerly CEO of EA and the person you could thank for preying on addictive qualities of microtransactions and ruining the reputation of Unity. John Riccatello was the CEO of EA from the time that Suda was making Shadow of the Dam. While there's no evidence he was the one personally telling Suda these things during the development of Shadow of the Dam, but I do think whoever did was in the position by John himself, or at least in Suda's eye. Damien and Travis Strikes Again represent a reaper of creativity. His role as an urban developer gentrifies and kneecaps the creator of urban environments. Does away with individuality for the sake of a city most appealing for tourists and IT guy who Travis really hates. The novel section covering Damien focuses a lot on IT guys and how unnatural their habits are, like their overuse of cologne, showing their detection for anything natural or human, which mirrored Travis. When Travis goes to collect the death ball from Damien, he had to go past to a campus that Damien company is housing on, which had a running track, baseball field, and swimming pool, which is all shallow. Nobody is actually using this. They just there to give appearance of being human. And now going back to John. The whole death of creativity is how John conducts business. Gary Young was essentially gentrified into Shadow of the Dam, taken away from Suda and turned into something Western, giving no regard to the creative mind behind the game. This showcased as bluntly as possible with Damien's beating of Jubilee. It showed how Suda felt after Shadow of the Dam, left twitching and beating as he realized what was his wasn't anymore. And when Travis does the same thing to Damien, in a way, it plays to the theme that most Suda game does, killing the past to more towards the future. Even in the serious Moonlight level, despite being the worst time of Suda's life, it does have a happy ending. While Jubilee is pessimistic about the whole thing, the other is very optimistic, especially with Travis, who is a big fan of Shadow of the Dam, talking all the time that how he improved the game, which the remaster did. Seeing how much Suda is in Travis, you could see this as a way that Suda is talking about the good time during the development of Shadow of the Dam. This could have been a victory lap on the court of Shadow of the Dam, but it isn't. It's just a touching memorial which saved the venom with the people who is most responsible. While yes, Damien did appear in No More Hero 3, he's only on Riccatello's name only. I could speculate that he's still upset about Sakurai making Travis in a mean costume.
Bagel delivery! What? I didn't order.
So yeah, that was my list of Dev being spiteful. While the first two are basically whatever, the Travis Strikes Again is the main reason why I want to make this video in the first place. Mostly because I plan to do a video on the No More Hero series and a Shadow of the Dam video, which I plan to do on later on this channel. So yeah, I got nothing to say, and then see ya, I guess.